It's August 2025, but my travel friend Tony Quinn and I are taking a ride back to the 1962 World's Fair in Seattle, 63 years ago. We have arrived on the Seattle Center monorail, which began operation in 1962, just in time for the fair. And it's still making its 2-minute trip every 10 minutes, up to 16 hours a day, as part of Seattle's public transit. Our destination? Seattle's famous Space Needle, the iconic centerpiece of the 1962 World's Fair. When I checked on what was happening in the U.S. space program in 1962, I found that astronaut John Glenn had just become the first American to orbit the Earth in Project Mercury. The space race was on between our nation and the Soviet Union. We were eager to ascend the Space Needle and check out the city below from a lofty 520-foot-high observation deck. From there, we would have a 360-degree indoor and outdoor panoramic view of Mount Rainier, Puget Sound, and both the Cascades and the Olympic mountain ranges. On a lower deck called the Loop, we found a cocktail lounge and took full advantage of it. The Loop had the world's only revolving glass floor that let us look straight down at the tower's structure in the ground below. We even got a glimpse of the heavy-duty gears that made the world go round. As we start around, we get a distant view of the Elliott Bay Marina, and looming before us, the Regal Princess, probably preparing for an Alaska cruise. Nearby, we see a bulk cargo ship moored to a grain terminal. Seattle is a major shipping hub, with access to the Pacific Ocean through the Puget Sound. Below us is the Climate Pledge Arena, home of the NHL's Seattle Kraken hockey team and the WNBA's Seattle Storm basketball team. This building is known as the world's first zero-carbon arena, powered solely by renewable energy. That's a very big deal in Seattle. Coming into view now is the Gates Foundation, founded by Bill and Melinda French Gates, and reported to be the third wealthiest private charitable foundation in the world. It deploys its $86 billion in assets to improve global health, reduce poverty, and increase access to education. What looks like a yacht club here, surrounded by yachts, is actually the Museum of History and Industry, focusing on local history. Now we see the Skyglass apartment building directly across from us, but we can't see in. Its unique zigzag glass facade reflects the buildings below, thereby providing a degree of privacy for residents within. Very clever. Seattle is a handsome city, home to more than 800,000 residents within the city itself, but its surrounding metro area boasts a population of more than 4 million, including the headquarters of giant high-tech companies like Microsoft and Amazon. Here's the Norwegian Encore, about to take off for Alaska with perhaps as many as 4,000 passengers. They can look forward to a beautiful passage through the Puget Sound. Returning to Earth, it should come as no surprise that we found ourselves in the Space Needle's tempting gift shop on the ground level. We were there just in time for some Christmas shopping. Lest we forget where we are, here's a giant model to help us reach for the sky and beyond. As we approached the famed Chihuly Garden and Glass Museum in Seattle, a grove of playful glass tree sculptures whetted our appetite for the unexpected. Imagine our surprise when we were greeted inside by shelves of what I thought were predictable glass pots, bowls, and containers. But the display got better when my eyes turned to a table of more artful and unusual glass forms. And that was just the beginning. With my faith restored in the whimsical creations of Dale Chihuly, I was eager to see more, and I was ready to learn more about the one-eyed artist who found surprising ways to bring glass to life. Dale Chihuly lost his left eye in a car accident in 1976, then 3 years later dislocated his left shoulder while body surfing. He was no longer able to wield a glass-blowing pipe, so he had to build a team of skilled artisans to help him bring his visions to life. Like this one, a multi-dimensional glass creation that dominates the sea life room. Look closely and below the surface to find shells, plants, and other aquatic creatures. While Chihuly enlists the help of others to execute his designs, his vision often starts with a sketch. Here's a concept of a goldfish on the left and an octopus on the right. Here's how the octopus came to life. It may have had brothers and sisters as well, all born of the same sketch. Chihuly loves vibrant colors, especially when they can be displayed with light shining through. This large-scale installation is very similar to his most famous work, the Fiore di Como, which uses 2,000 hand-blown glass flowers to cover the lobby ceiling of the Bellagio Hotel in Las Vegas. Multiple layers give the illusion of movement as you pass underneath. Vibrant flowers and seascapes give Chihuly license to overwhelm the viewer with light and color. The artist's early training in interior design may explain his fascination with chandeliers. Here's a whole room of them. Imagine being the housekeeper who has to clean them. Films shown at the museum give us insight into how Dale Chihuly works with his team to shape these one-of-a-kind creations. Here are a few clips that show bits and pieces of the process.
Variety. They ended up looking like clouds. And then another color on the outside. So those are 3 layers. Sometimes it'd be as many as 4 or 5 layers if we wanted to. And then it'd be a lip wrap color, usually contrasting to the interior or exterior color. Then the final heat, you go in, it gets hot, hotter, hotter, you can move faster, faster, and the ball begins to open. It gets open to about 4 feet, then you hold it down, and then the wrinkles and the forms take place, and much of that has to do with how the color was applied and how the piece was blown.
On the way out, we walked down a long corridor hung with, what else? Chihuly chandeliers. I was surprised they could be exposed to the weather and survive. I guess there's something enduring about the bold glass art of Dale Chihuly. I'm indebted to my travel friend Tony Quinn for recommending the historic Mayflower Park Hotel in downtown Seattle. We didn't need a rental car because we were close to anything we cared about seeing, and we could easily walk or use public transportation. Yes, this venerable hotel is older, but it wouldn't be historic if it weren't. Guests have been coming here since 1927. The reception area and lobby feature soaring ceilings and a massive 5-tier crystal chandelier. The setting is classic, displaying a European-style elegance. A grand staircase leads to the mezzanine level, where guests can relax in an intimate setting in front of a marble fireplace. The furnishings would make Queen Anne proud. We camped out in Oliver's Lounge, which we learned was the first daylight bar in the state of Washington. The blue laws changed in 1976, and the passing public could finally view patrons drinking alcohol through Oliver's giant corner windows. The next morning, we were off to see the city, taking full advantage of our hotel's central location. The Seattle metropolitan area has given birth to some of the nation's best-known companies: United Parcel Service, Nordstrom, Eddie Bauer, Amazon, Starbucks, and Boeing. Here's what we saw when we checked out the last three I named. The Amazon Spheres house a conservatory that surrounds an office and meeting space with 40,000 plants from dozens of countries. It's part of Amazon's global headquarters campus. The middle sphere is 4 stories high. The media nicknamed this Seattle landmark Bezos Balls in honor of risk-taking founder Jeff Bezos. The name stuck. Speaking of worldwide corporations, you're looking at the first Starbucks cafe, dating back to the company's founding in 1971. At first, Starbucks just sold coffee beans, but later moved down the block to this location and expanded into sit-down cafes. Here you see the original logo, a bare-breasted siren inspired by a 15th century Norse woodcut. Today, the world headquarters of Starbucks spreads over a full city block and invites visitors to savor its history and relax in its gift shop and cafe. The exhibit area depicts Hacienda Alsacia in Costa Rica, the first and only coffee farm where Starbucks still raises its coffee beans. Here's the type of mini truck used on the farm. Another big Seattle area company is Boeing, which retains several giant manufacturing plants in neighboring towns. We visited Boeing's Future of Flight reception area for the plant tour of its Everett factory, north of Seattle. There was plenty to see while waiting for our 80-minute guided tour to begin. Everything seemed supersized. On the tour, we'll be looking down from the visitors' gallery into the world's largest factory to observe the Boeing 777 and 777X assembly line. The building itself covers more than 98 acres. Among the futuristic exhibits that caught my eye were the image of an autonomous tanker refueling a fighter jet, and an autonomous combat drone used to accompany fighter jets. When we went outside on the sky deck, we saw a tour bus of the type we'd soon be taking about to enter the secure area. A small plane appears, about to land on the runway of Payne Field, whose main commercial tenant is Alaska Airlines. Otherwise, Payne Field primarily serves private planes and testing of Boeing's newest airplanes. Nearby, we see a number of new Boeing 777X aircraft awaiting their engines and final certification. Notice that their wingtips can fold to fit at gates. When we started our tour, we were required to check all cameras, phones, and even pens, pencils, notepads, and binoculars. After all, Boeing is the 4th largest defense contractor in the world. Security is paramount. Fortunately, I was able to capture these time-lapse videos that are much more digestible than the snail's pace of assembly we observed on the factory floor. Given recent quality control concerns, the simplest steps now require redundant verification checks, and this takes time. Back in the reception area, we continued exploring the future of flight. Here's the Whisk Arrow. It's a fully autonomous electric air taxi designed for vertical takeoff and landing. The target date for this cutie is 2030. Step inside the International Space Station and you'll find Boeing's technology at work. Scientists can put their hands inside this glove box in order to manipulate experiments under conditions of microgravity. This could even allow them to use 3D printing to make replacement parts, rather than carry a big inventory. If you're not intimidated by the look of this panel, aerospace employment could await you. Finally, Boeing is the lead contractor for NASA's Space Launch System, SLS, the rocket used in the Artemis program to return man to the moon. At this time, I can't name a more ambitious goal within reach for the future of flight. We signed on to a small group tour to see Seattle attractions beyond the Space Needle. It was a bright sunny morning, perfect for a 28-mile drive east of Seattle to the beautiful Snoqualmie Falls in the foothills of the Cascade Mountains. With a drop of 268 feet, Snoqualmie Falls is about 100 feet higher than Niagara Falls. The ancient Snoqualmie tribe considers the falls sacred, especially the mist the falls create, which they believe connects heaven and earth. The tribe owns the surrounding land, but control of the water volume and the mist it produces is in the hands of Puget Sound Energy Company, which owns 2 power plants nearby. They divert the flow of Snoqualmie River water through their turbines and jealously guard their need to regulate that flow so that they can power up to 40,000 homes. But rather than share profits with the tribe or let it have a say in the volume of water reaching the falls, the power company provides some reduction in the tribe's energy bills. Needless to say, that doesn't resolve the spiritual issue. So the conflict is ongoing. Meanwhile, the Snoqualmie tribe owns a casino and the lodge and spa above the falls, which was used to film the TV series Twin Peaks. Within the city of Seattle is a most unusual public park. Some might call this ungainly structure art, others industrial archaeology. Gasworks Park is on the National Register of Historic Places. It preserves some of the remains of a coal gasification plant on the site of the former Seattle Gaslight Company. But gas wasn't the only product produced here. There was tar for roofing, lamp black for pigment, charcoal briquettes for heating, sulfur for insecticides, and 3 different chemicals used in explosives. Today, the 19 acres of Gasworks Park are devoted to lakeside recreation, summer peace concerts, Independence Day celebrations, and even kite flying. Unfortunately, fencing around the machinery hasn't kept determined climbers from tackling the towers. The result has led to more than a dozen fall-related incidents and 3 deaths in the last few years. Meanwhile, the city view is beautiful from here. From the Space Needle and downtown Seattle to the takeoffs and landings of continuous seaplane traffic on Lake Union's 2 5,000-foot intersecting runways. 2 commercial companies, Kenmore Air Harbor and Seattle Seaplanes, generate an average of about 120 flights a day. Canadian destinations make Lake Union an international airport. It probably comes as no surprise to learn that the first seaplane flight from Lake Union was by William E. Boeing in 1916. Anybody familiar with Norwegian folklore knows that trolls live under bridges, right? Well, Seattle's Fremont Troll isn't exactly homeless, though his creation by 4 local artists in 1990 displaced the homeless who had been living under the Aurora Bridge previously. Today, he's loved by all children, young and old, big and little. This popular fellow is 18 feet tall, composed of concrete over steel rebar and wire. He's found his way into movies, music, a video game, and even a play. Naturally, there's merch to support fundraising, and it takes the form of t-shirts and even a chia pet. Volunteers from the Fremont community maintain the adjoining 2-acre Trolls Knoll forest as a green space of trees and gardens. Seattle's lively waterfront is a magnet for visitors and Seattleites alike. Yes, that's what the residents of Seattle call themselves, Seattleites. Seems to fit with the Space Needle theme. Here we find tempting seafood restaurants and harbor cruise opportunities on pier after pier. Elliott's Oyster House caught our attention, and we just had to sample its wares. We were not disappointed. As our attention turned to the pier next to ours, we decided it was a beautiful afternoon for a sightseeing cruise on Elliott Bay. Soon we were looking at a Carnival cruise ship that was slightly larger than the boat we were on. Cruise ships are a very familiar sight in Seattle, which is the top home port for Alaska cruises. Here's a bottom-up view of the Seattle Great Wheel, which is 175 feet high, comparable to a 17-story building. It's been around since 2012. Couldn't resist that one. Somewhat hidden here is Seattle's tallest building, the Columbia Center Tower. It has declared its 73rd floor the Sky View Observatory and offers visitors a 360-degree view of downtown, Puget Sound, the Olympic Mountains, and Mount Rainier. The one structure that never seems to hide is Seattle's iconic Space Needle. The city's growth rate has been impressive. Between 2010 and 2020, it grew by more than 21%, making Seattle one of the nation's fastest-growing large cities. We learned that we are visiting the northernmost major city in the United States, located just 100 miles south of the Canadian border. Now we're passing grain elevators that are here not because Seattle grows grain, but because it's a terminal for automated transfer of Midwestern farm products brought in by rail cars and trucks to ocean-going ships for export. Here's another example of Seattle's maritime industry. Ships undergoing maintenance in a floating dry dock on what is called Harbor Island. Vigor Industrial owns the Vigilant dry locks you see here. A couple of these vessels look like naval warships to me. But what do I know? Up ahead are container ships and the massive cranes that load and unload them. All are highly automated. The name of this vessel, Costco Boston, can be confusing. It's not Costco with a T like the retailer. COSCO without a T stands for China Ocean Shipping Company. Boston is just one of their more than 1,000 container ships. The Port of Seattle, when combined with the Port of Tacoma, ranks as the 5th largest container gateway in North America. That makes this Northwest Seaport Alliance among the top 50 globally by container volume. Very impressive. As we head back, we see a sports stadium off in the distance. T-Mobile Park is the home of the MLB Seattle Mariners. Next to it, we find Lumen Field, home of the NFL Seattle Seahawks. While Seattle is famous for rain, the city only gets about 37 inches a year, more light drizzle or mist than heavy downpours. We had enjoyed a beautiful afternoon cruise. Our open-air tour bus leaves the Seattle Convention Center on a sparkling day, ready to show off the city and some of its notable attractions. Today we see modern skyscrapers, but Seattle has a fascinating history dating back to the mid-19th century. Occidental Park is in Pioneer Square, the now gentrified original settlement whose wooden structures perished in the Great Seattle Fire of 1889. brick and stone buildings replaced them, and today house art galleries, antique stores, cafes, and unique boutiques. But the fascinating history today is found underground, and our tour guide was eager to tell the story. We learned that drainage problems caused new structures to be built on top of older ones, thus burying the remains of historic Pioneer Square. At first, customers had to climb ladders between building entrances on the new street level and the original storefronts below. But that didn't last.
Right there. This is what you can't see in the photograph, and it is important to the story. You can't see the waterfront. I want to give you an idea where the waterfront was in the 1850s. It was right behind you. That wall wasn't there yet. You could literally look right across the street to the waterfront, so it was called Front Street. Today, elevated, it's First Avenue, and Front Street was right there.
Over time, the lower levels were abandoned. Some were used for storage, shelter for the homeless, gambling halls, and speakeasies. Today, they fascinate tourists like us. Our Pioneer Square tour moved outside to check out the architecture of the period and learn a bit about the music scene in Seattle, which goes back many decades. The Central Saloon helped introduce live blues and rock and roll bands to the neighborhood. We went inside, wanting to learn more, even though it was a little early in the day for anything but coffee. We found out that this venue originally opened in 1892, though it has changed names and ownership several times. In the 1980s, it became widely recognized as the birthplace of grunge rock, a genre with its roots in Seattle. Among the notable grunge bands that appeared on the Central Saloon stage here were Nirvana, Pearl Jam, and Soundgarden. Boy, did we feel old. Having had a little coffee, we gravitated to the restroom to take care of business, where the history of this venerable watering hole was on wall-to-wall display. Hundreds of musical groups have performed here. Every West Coast city has to have a Chinatown. So we left our hop-on, hop-off bus to see what Seattle had to offer. Seattle's historic Chinatown Gate is a modern Pai Fang archway, 45 feet tall, colorfully decorated from the outside as well as from the inside. The construction's modern, using steel and ceramics for longer life. As we looked around, we saw a few shops with Chinese names, but only a few. We were expecting a lot more hustle and bustle. Clearly, our tour bus hadn't deposited us in the heart of the Chinatown neighborhood. We were excited to find that the neighborhood had its own train depot, Union Station. But it, too, was deserted. Only a couple of trains a day stopped here. We were a bit disappointed, but hopped on our tour bus when it came around and soon realized the heart of Seattle's Chinatown was Hing-Hay Park, which catered to several Asian cultures. The park looked very inviting. Plus, there were several museums that would be worth checking out. Oh well, next visit. Seattle is well known for the Pike Place Market, said to be among the most visited tourist attractions in the world. It's not unusual to draw more than 20 million visitors a year. I found the atmosphere to be like that of a state fair, with lots of booths and stalls selling everything from fresh flowers and collectibles to quick snacks, beautiful produce, and seafood of all kinds. Take a look. The main arcade opened in 1907, making Pike Place Market one of the oldest public markets in the U.S. The stands are constantly changing, since local farmers and craftspeople sell from tables they rent on a daily basis. The action never stops. The highlight for me was to witness the famous Pike Place fish toss. Employees of one of the many fishmongers here have stolen the show by tossing fish among themselves. Once a customer chooses a large salmon, for example, an employee picks up the fish from behind the counter and hurls it to another employee on the other side, who wraps it for the customer. It made me want to buy one just to see the action. We learned that this particular vendor had lots of competition, but only they had secured exclusive tossing rights in the Pike Place Market. With that, we ended our Seattle visit and said goodbye to Puget Sound. What started with a Space Needle ended with a fish toss. Along the way, we touched on Seattle's fascinating history, checked out its industrial accomplishments, and even its notable music scene. Now we behold majestic Mount Rainier, a 14,411-foot active stratovolcano that, don't worry, hasn't erupted for more than 150 years. We can probably sneak back for another look.